begin closing in Georgia, ending Senate runoff race between Walker and Warnock. GOP Senate nominee Herschel Walker, left, and Democratic Sen. Raphael Warnock speak during their respective general election night watch parties on November 8, 2022, in Atlanta. AP photo/Bryn Anderson. AP photo/John Bazemore. Head to Fox News Election Center for the latest results from the Georgia Senate runoff. Polls have started closing in Georgia, marking an end to the contentious Senate runoff election between incumbent Democrat Sen. Raphael Warnock and GOP nominee Herschel Walker. In the November 8 general election, Walker garnered 48.5% of the vote and Warnock earned 49.5%. With neither candidate clearing the 50% threshold needed to declare victory at the time, the race advanced to a runoff. Polls opened this morning at 7 a.m. EST, but an estimated 1.8 million voters had already cast their ballots in the state's early voting period that concluded on Friday, December 2. Early in-person voter turnout hit a single-day record high on Friday with 352,953 ballots cast, according to state elections data. Fox News' Sophia Slasik contributed to this update. Posted by Kyle Morris. Share. 1 hour ago. Polls close soon in Georgia's Senate runoff race. Polls are set to close in Georgia at 7 p.m. EST. iStock/file. Voting in Georgia's Senate runoff race will wrap up with polls in the Peach State set to close at 7 p.m. EST, about 1 hour from now. Voters that are in line by 7 p.m. EST will still be allowed to cast their ballot. Polls opened this morning at 7 a.m. EST, though about 1.8 million voters already cast their ballots in the state's early voting period that concluded on Friday, December 2. Early in-person voter turnout hit a single-day record high on Friday with 352,953 ballots cast, according to state elections data. Democratic incumbent Sen. Raphael Warnock garnered about 49.5% of the vote during the general election on November 8, triggering a runoff election as Georgia law requires a candidate to win an outright majority to declare victory. Herschel Walker, the Trump-endorsed Republican nominee, won about 48.5% of the vote, with the remaining ballots being cast for the Libertarian candidate. Posted by Sophia Slasik. Share. 1 hour ago. Warnock still won't say if he supports any abortion limitations just 1 day before Georgia runoff. Sen. Raphael Warnock, DGA, is still refusing to say whether he would support any limitations on abortion with just 1 day remaining before his Senate runoff election against Republican nominee Herschel Walker. Warnock was joined by fellow Democratic Georgia Sen. Jon Ossoff during a string of rallies in Athens on Sunday, when Fox News Digital asked both if there were any instances at all in which they would support limits on when during a pregnancy an abortion could be performed. Neither directly answered the question. "I voted to protect Roe v. Wade, and I would do that again," Warnock stated, while Ossoff appeared to avoid answering at all until Fox pressed him. RNC Chairwoman McDaniel says Walker is working so hard as voters head to polls in GA Senate runoff. RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel provides analysis of the Georgia Senate runoff as voting is underway. She also discusses her fight to hold her seat as chairwoman and her plans for the 2024 election. Biden flees East Coast as Georgia votes in critical Senate runoff election. President Biden hopped on long flight to Arizona Tuesday as Georgia was hosting a Senate runoff election that will determine whether the Senate remains in a 50-50 split, or whether Democrats hold 51 seats. The president did not make a single appearance with Sen. Ralph Warnock, DGA, over the last month as he fends off a challenge from Republican nominee Herschel Walker. As Georgians went to the polls to vote Tuesday, Biden opted for a tour of the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Co. plant in Phoenix to tout the $52 billion CHIPS Act he signed in August, which provided tens of billions of dollars in new federal funding for domestic semiconductor manufacturing. "I'm going to Georgia today to help Sen. War not to Georgia, I'm going to help Sen. Warnock by doing a major fundraiser up in Boston, the president said Friday. DOJ monitoring Georgia polls for voting rights compliance as election is underway. The Department of Justice announced that it will be observing the Georgia Senate election Tuesday in order to ensure no violations of voters' civil rights. Herschel Walker, the Trump-endorsed Republican nominee, is running to unseat the Democratic incumbent Sen. Raphael Warnock. The DOJ released its statement on monitoring polling locations in a press release published Tuesday, offering a list of counties under observation. For this election, the Civil Rights Division will monitor for compliance with the federal voting rights laws on Election Day in 4 jurisdictions: Cobb County, Fulton County, Gwinnett County, and Macon-Bibb County. Monitors will include personnel from the Civil Rights Division and from the U.S. Attorney's offices. Democrats outspend Republicans 2-1 in Georgia Senate runoff ad wars. If Republican nominee Herschel Walker loses in Tuesday's Georgia Senate runoff election against Democratic Sen. Raphael Warnock, one contributing factor will be a lack of air cover. In the month-long campaign battle in Georgia, Warnock and allied Democratic outside groups outspent Walker and GOP-aligned groups by a roughly 2-1 margin. The margin was $57.2 million for Democrats to $27.3 million for Republicans, according to data from November 9 to December 5 provided by Ad Impact, a nationally known ad tracking firm. The biggest spender was the Warnock campaign, at $27.3 million, compared to just $11.5 million by Walker's team. Campaigns get more bang for their bucks than outside groups such as super PACs when it comes to TV commercial rates. Walker blasts Sen. Warnock in new ad with female athlete who competed against a biological male. Herschel Walker, the GOP nominee running in the Georgia runoff Senate race, released a new runoff ad bashing Democratic Sen. Raphael Warnock for voting against an amendment that would ban funding to educational institutions that allow biological men to compete in women's sports. The ad features Walker with Riley Gaines, a 12-time NCAA All-American swimmer, who shared her story of competing against a biological male in a women's swimming competition. For more than a decade I've worked so hard, 4 a.m. practices to be the best. But my senior year, I was forced to compete against a biological male, Gaines stated in the campaign ad. Walker called the competition unfair and wrong. Race forecaster shifts Georgia Senate runoff race from toss-up to leans Democratic. On the eve of Georgia's runoff election day, Sabato's crystal ball shifted the battleground Senate race from toss-up to leans Democratic, pointing to early voting trends expected to benefit the Democratic incumbent Sen. Raphael Warnock. As we see it, with the black share of the early vote up a few notches from what we saw ahead of November's election, Walker starts out even deeper in the hole, the ratings report reads. The ratings change comes after early voting concluded last week in the Peach State, hitting a record high for single-day early in-person turnout with 352,953 ballots cast on Friday, according to state elections data. Nikki Haley. Dozens of top Republicans stump for Walker ahead of Georgia's Senate runoff. Nikki Haley, the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and South Carolina governor, on Monday topped off what has been a flood of support from prominent national Republicans seeking to propel Senate nominee Herschel Walker over the finish line in his runoff race against incumbent Democratic Sen. Raphael Warnock. The potential 2024 presidential candidate was the latest high-profile figure to stump for Walker since the November general election, a long list that included Sen. Ted Cruz, Texas, former Democratic Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Alabama Senator-elect Katie Britt, Sen. Lindsey Graham, Rs.C., Sen. John Kennedy, Law, former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Ben Carson, Sen. Tim Scott, Rs.C., and Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel. In an exclusive interview with Fox News Digital following Walker's final rally before the runoff, Haley underscored the importance turnout would play for Republicans to oust Warnock and secure a split Senate. She also ripped the incumbent Democrat for what she said was his arrogance in claiming Walker did not have the competence and character to do the job.